Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Take Back Your Health blog. I'm here with Scilla Whatcott, and she is a homeopathic practitioner. And we're going to talk to her today about homeoprophylaxis, which is something that has been around for quite some time, but not enough people know about it. And thanks so much for joining us, Scilla.
Thanks, Robin. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm going to introduce Scilla and talk about her background, but this topic is so relevant today because we're talking about building natural immunity and doing it in a healthy way to protect ourselves from common illnesses and more serious illnesses. And that's getting a lot of press right now. So Scilla, thank you for joining us for this important topic. And I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about your background. You have been very involved with homeopathy for a while now. You hold a BA degree from Arizona State University, a diploma from the 4-year professional program at Northwestern Academy of Homeopathy in Minneapolis, and a PhD from Kingdom College. You served as a member of the research faculty at the American Medical College of Homeopathy, and currently you are an instructor at Normandale Community College. And what's very exciting to talk about now, currently, because it's coming up very soon, you are hosting a conference on homeoprophylaxis, and we'll tell everyone the details about that. It's coming up in October, and this conference is being hosted by Worldwide Choice, which is something that you founded recently, and you're spreading the information about homeopathy, homeoprophylaxis, and how it can help us build natural immunity. So thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you wanted to add to your background or what you're doing currently with the Worldwide Choice organization?
Just that there are a couple of books that I published that can be obtained through Amazon. One is called There Is a Choice, and it gives a nice description of homeoprophylaxis. The other one is called The Solution. So either of those can be found on Amazon.
Great. Yes. Thank you for adding that in. So I'm going to say this one time, I'm not going to harp on it, but homeoprophylaxis can be seen as perhaps a middle ground between what we're seeing become a very deep divide between parents who are for vaccines and parents who are for an alternative schedule or alternative vaccinations. I don't want to call them anti-vax because some of them are just for alternative schedules. So that's what the point is, though, is that homeoprophylaxis may be a middle ground for some parents who still want protection from those diseases. So that being said, let's just go into a really brief description of what homeopathy is and homeoprophylaxis, and then I want to ask you how you got into this yourself. So go ahead and start with homeopathy and homeoprophylaxis.
Sure, Robin. Homeopathy is a system of medicine that uses elements that are natural, animal, mineral, or vegetable products, and then those elements are diluted until there's no original molecule, so it becomes an energetic medicine, and then that liquid is anointed onto pellets, and people take pellets. Many people have seen homeopathic pellets in the health food store, and they're available for anyone to take in low potencies. Homeopaths use very high potencies and deal at a much deeper level, and that's basically what homeopathy is. It's curative. It doesn't suppress symptoms. It doesn't cover up symptoms. It reads all the symptoms that a body is expressing as a message for which remedy to match. So that's a brief definition of homeopathy. Homeoprophylaxis is a subset. Prophylaxis means to prevent. So it's basically using a homeopathic remedy to prevent disease and has been done for over 200 years.
Now, one thing that you had told me in the past that I wanted to make sure we share with everyone is the founding of the United States Food and Drug Administration.
The FDA was founded by a number of people, but one of them was Royal Copeland, who was an MD and also a homeopathic physician. So he was sure to put homeopathic pharmacopoeia which within the FDA. so that when you buy these remedies in the store, you can see they have a drug number on them, an expiration date. They're protected under the FDA's umbrella, and none have ever been recalled, ever. So if we hold that up next to pharmaceutical drugs, we know there's a big difference.
Right, right. So homeopathic remedies are an energetic medicine of sort. It's a
Right.
dilution. It's a dilution of a plant, animal, or mineral that will stimulate the body's immune system in a certain way that you want it to be stimulated.
Correct.
Okay. And so I want to talk more about the immune system and how it responds. But first, for everyone out there, I'm sure we all are very curious how you got into this and what you're doing now with homeopathy, just kind of the story a little bit.
Sure. Well, my children brought me to homeopathy. I have 3 adopted children from Russia, Taiwan, and China, and then 1 biological child that I gave birth to. They all had different issues, physical issues. Nothing was helping. So I took my son to a pediatrician at one point who recommended I see a homeopath for his asthma, that there had been some studies that were successful. So I took my son to a homeopath, and within 6 months, his asthma was completely gone. I took another child with migraines, and those were gone. My daughter had received a vaccine injury at the age of 1 year, and she almost died, went into aseptic meningitis. And as a result, I began researching vaccines to understand exactly what was in them, how they acted within the body. And that was about 20 years ago. And the more I learned, the less I wanted to continue to vaccinate any of my children. So then within homeopathy, I went back to school, 4 years of homeopathic medical school, and I bumped into a colleague who introduced me to homeoprophylaxis. So at that point, I started investigating and understanding it more, and seeing that it was a solution. You know, there was this huge divide between parents who didn't want to vaccinate or did want to vaccinate or change the schedule. And this is absolutely the solution because of the safety, the effectiveness, and it's natural, it's gentle. You can't beat that. So that's what got me into it. My colleague had been to Cuba where she presented and met with Dr. Isaac Golden, who's one of the forerunners of the research with homeoprophylaxis and childhood diseases. She brought his program back to the U.S. I joined with her. We formed a nonprofit. We distributed to quite a few number of children. Wrote our first book together, The Solution, and then I moved forward into Worldwide Choice, where I started doing conferences so I could educate people and also train medical providers so they can either offer it to their patients or at least be assured that it's reliable and recommend it. You know, I want them to have the peace of mind that the research is there and the efficacy is there. Right. So that's what I'm currently doing. I have practice, but I also do the conferences, do training, and work with parents with homeoprophylaxis all the time.
Right. That's great. So I'm imagining that everyone's kind of wondering, well, homeoprophylaxis, what does it prevent against and what does it entail? Let's talk about what diseases homeoprophylaxis can protect against, and then maybe how it does that. And let's compare it between how it does that homeopathically, how it protects you by stimulating the immune system in that respect, and can we compare it to how vaccines stimulate the immune system?
Sure, that would be good.
Okay.
So virtually any infectious disease, because we make the remedies from a source material, if you obtain the source material of an infectious disease, either a spirochete or mucus discharge or some product of that disease, you can make homeoprophylaxis, or we call it HP for short. You can make it for any infectious disease, basically. It works in the innate arm of the immune system instead of the adaptive arm. So let me back up and just say a little bit about the immune system. These two parts of the immune system work in concert with each other. And as a baby matures, they mature together. So you want a balance of these two arms of the immune system. One is called Th1, and that's the innate cellular immunity, and the other is called Th2, and that's the adaptive or humoral immunity. So that side produces antibodies that go after the offending agent, whereas the innate side is kind of a constant undercurrent keeping us healthy all the time. Our long-term health is really a product of that innate arm of the immune system. So you have these two arms of the immune system. Vaccines work to produce antibodies. So they have a component that's called an adjuvant, and the adjuvant excites that part of the immune system, and antibodies are produced. And for a long time, antibodies were thought to be the gold standard of immunity. If you have antibodies, you have immunity. But what we know is that some people are very high responders. They create a lot of antibodies. Others are very low responders. And a third group are non-responders. They do not produce an antibody to that particular material. So all three of those groups can still catch a disease. So we know that antibodies are not the only indication of immunity. So within the immune system, the front door to the immune system is mucous membrane. That's where our immunity recognizes a foreign substance. So in your nose, in your mouth, something comes in and you recognize it, and the immune function begins to mount, to ramp up. With vaccines, I'll do a little compare and contrast. With vaccines, it's injected through a needle directly into the muscle and into your bloodstream. So as human beings, injecting foreign proteins into our bloodstream is not the way we naturally catch disease at all. So HP provides a natural means of introducing the disease by pellets that go into the mouth, melt in the mouth. The next point of comparison is components of the vaccine. Vaccines have preservatives, they have adjuvants, and sometimes aluminum or mercury has been used for these two purposes. They have a number of different excipients, including antibiotics, MSG, different chemical ingredients for preservation, for enhancing that production of antibodies. HP has nothing but the disease itself. So initially, the concept of vaccines was very accurate to introduce a small portion of the disease to elicit a natural human immune response. But along the way, more and more and more has been added to vaccines, and they've used different mediums to try and attenuate or weaken the disease product. They've used mediums such as monkeys' kidneys or different proteins from different animals. So when you add those proteins into the human biome, there may be different viruses that go unidentified that are included in those proteins that we don't know about. For instance, with the polio vaccine, they found SV40, the simian virus number 40. So down the road, different complications can occur from things that are included in those animal proteins. Also, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, that's really, it's so far, it's a lot of information, but it sounds like the homeopathy, homeoprophylaxis, introduces the disease orally.
Right.
And it elicits a natural immune response. It's a slow build. And the vaccines injects it directly into your muscle tissue, which is not a natural way. It's not the natural way that the human body is used to being to encountering an infectious agent. And so it's going to be an unnatural immune response. And in addition to the infectious agent that you're injecting, you're also injecting aluminum, formaldehyde, polysorbate, monkey DNA, which they've now linked to tumorous cell growth, which they found
Correct.
that SV40 in tumor cells, they say.
Correct.
So there's lots of stuff in those vaccines that the combination of many vaccine doses all at once, we're not sure what happens, really.
Right, and that's the other point, that with HP, one disease at a time is administered. So the body has time to create an immune response and resolve that one disease instead of introducing 8 diseases, which is what's typically given at 2, 4, and 6 months of age. So only one disease through mucous membrane, no other additives, and it's compatible with nature. I mean, our bodies are 9/10 bacteria, viruses, parasites. We have one human cell to every 9 of these other cells. So the concept of trying to eliminate disease or overcome disease, it's not completely accurate. We need to live in concert with these diseases. And we know from studies that many childhood diseases confer health benefits later on.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen that in different studies.
Right. So I'm kind of a nerd for all this science stuff, and some questions have come up as I'm reading more about homeoprophylaxis and how viruses interact with the human body. But I want to emphasize quickly that it's not, some of these vaccines are live viruses and some are deactivated viruses. They do that through formaldehyde or other chemicals to kill the virus before injecting it. Homeoprophylaxis is just the energetic imprint of
Correct.
It's not putting an actual live virus or even a dead virus into your body.
Correct. It's the frequency. It's the frequency of that virus, and we're all energetic beings. So your system recognizes that frequency and is able to build an immune response if you meet that frequency in nature afterwards. So you could either repel the disease, or if you catch the disease, it'll be a more mild case of the disease. Because we know no method is 100% effective.
Right. So homeoprophylaxis is basically training your immune system how to respond when it meets it in the future.
Correct.
So it goes along the same the concept of building natural immunity and training your immune system is that it knows how to respond when it encounters it so that you can overcome quickly without many symptoms.
Correct. And we call it, amongst homeopaths, we call it satisfying the susceptibility. Because we all have a certain degree of susceptibility to certain diseases. Yours might be different than mine. And giving you that energetic frequency will satisfy your particular susceptibility to that targeted disease. So that when you meet it, you're no longer as susceptible to it.
Right, right. And so they used to actually administer vaccines this way with the virus on a sugar pellet, but they didn't. Was that how they used to do the polio virus?
Initially, when they rolled out the polio virus, that was, but it was a live virus, and they had cases of polio as a result.
Right, right. In fact, it was quite a increase in the number of polio cases when they did that vaccine. So this is the energetic imprint of the disease that signals to your body to mount an immune response. And so then in the future, when you encounter that energetic infectious disease or infectious agent, the energy of it will signal to your immune system to mount that response again, and your body will be able to overcome.
Correct. And when the child takes the pellet or an individual takes the pellet, we can see a very mild immune response. Very mild. It might be a little sniffly nose. It might be crankiness. It lasts for a very short period and then it passes. And parents feel very empowered by seeing this because they grasp how their child's immune system's working, but it's in a gentle way. So no threat of an injury.
Right, right. Now, one exciting thing that we haven't talked about yet, we need to say it. There are different countries that have used this homeoprophylaxis method to protect against epidemics. And there is research, and there are accounts of this being able to protect large populations. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, there's a couple of great studies. One was in Cuba in 2007 and 2008. They had multiple hurricanes come through. Leptospirosis is endemic to Cuba and tropical locations, and they would vaccinate their entire population against leptospirosis annually. Well, when those two hurricanes came through, they could not roll out the vaccine quickly enough, so they decided to try homeoprophylaxis. And they treated 2.3 million people in one area, and the incidence of leptospirosis dropped precipitously that year, even though it went up in other regions. So they continued to do further experimentation with dengue fever, hepatitis, pneumonia, a number of different diseases with great success in Cuba. In India, they reduced the incidence of Japanese encephalitis for about 20 million people. So the Indian government accepts HP as a substitute for vaccines. People can opt for HP because it was so successful. In Brazil, against meningitis, there was a large meningitis outbreak. They had a 95% effectiveness rate using homeoprophylaxis against meningitis. So those are some epidemic examples. And then Dr. Isaac Golden did a study with about 3,000 children over a period of 15 years, where he gave them HP for childhood diseases, the ones that were on the typical schedule. And what he found is there was about a 90% rate of effectiveness for those people who'd been positively exposed to the diseases. And most interestingly, he found that these children had more robust long-term health, fewer colds, fewer ear infections, all of those kinds of chronic issues were way less than in vaccinated or unvaccinated. He used 3 groups. So that was a wonderful study, and that his protocol is the one that I follow in treating families.
And where can people go to find those studies? Do you have a place on your website where you've linked to those?
Yeah, there's a few on the website, worldwidechoice.org. And at the conference, we'll be having the newest information because I have 2 doctors coming from India. Dr. Isaac Golden will be speaking. So there'll be a lot of information there that will be accessible as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And so let's talk about the conference for a second. So this is in Florida, October 7th and 8th.
7 through 9. Mm-hmm.
7 through 9. And you have some really wonderful speakers. And obviously Sally Fallon is someone that everyone will recognize. But there's one scientist, and I cannot for the life of me remember how to pronounce her name, but it starts with a T.
Yeah, Tetiana is her first name, Obukanich.
Okay, so I reread her article. She's a scientist from Harvard, correct?
She did part of her study at Harvard. She's an immunologist, PhD, and she's the keynote speaker. So she's going to be talking a little bit about how this works in the immune system, perhaps. Mm-hmm. So that should be interesting.
Yeah. Not to get off topic too much, but there's an article she wrote that was published on Truth Kings, which I happened to read and again the other day. And she does a really good job of explaining vaccines and what's, the logic or the flawed logic there. Yeah,
Tatiana's a wonderful speaker. She's
so smart.
Very bright, very gentle, very calm. She's a wonderful speaker. She always has a standing ovation. Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking forward to having her. We'll have Alan Phillips, who is the only attorney in the U.S. Specializing in vaccine exemptions. Mm. So he'll be there. We have Deborah Bell, who's an osteopath from California, and she was a pediatric anesthesiologist and has some observations about children coming out of anesthesia who've been vaccinated versus not vaccinated. Isaac Golden, of course, will tell some of the current studies. We're going to have him we'll have a video of him. He can't come in from Australia, but we'll have a video of him. We'll have Sally Fallon talking about nutrition and how that supports natural immunity. Mm-hmm. We'll have Dr. Charles Gant, who will talk about the forefront of medicine, how it's individualized to the unique genome that we each hold. We'll have two doctors from India talking about the scope of homeoprophylaxis in India and also the Japanese encephalitis studies. Mm-hmm. We'll have Dr. Peter DeVette talking about the emotions and what trauma does to our immune system and heightened emotions to our immune system. The Dr. Ronald Whitmont will talk about the gut biome and how important that is to natural immunity. Mm-hmm. I think that's everyone. So yeah, it's going to be great. And I'll be talking also about the applications. I'll do for healthcare practitioners. It should be a really full 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds wonderful. And tell us the location. It's
St. Petersburg, Florida at the Hilton or Hilton downtown St. Petersburg.
Okay. And they can find out more about that at worldwidechoice.org/conference?
Correct.
Okay, good. So before I forget, I want to ask you a few logistical questions about HP, because there are probably parents or general public out there who are wondering if it's right for them. Where can they get it? Is it legal? Will their state accept it? Different questions like that.
Sure.
And let's start. Let me just ask you to affirm this. This is all FDA approved, right? Because
these remedies are not on the homeopathic pharmacopoeia because they are made as the diseases come up. So right. These are not on the pharmacopoeia. So you need to have somebody who has access to these nosodes. Lay people cannot purchase these particular remedies. Okay. So you have to have either a trained homeopath or a physician willing to be the area to access the kits.
Okay.
So it is not recognized legally as an alternative to vaccines anywhere. But if you live in a state with a philosophical exemption, you can choose to do whatever you want to naturally enhance your immunity. So those states, there's no problem. The states with a religious or medical exemption, it's probably best to claim a religious exemption and then have the choice of using homeoprophylaxis for your immunity. Right. I think that answers those questions for you.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, you and I can't provide a solution right now to everyone because there are states that are taking away these exemptions. Right. So in certain places, people will have to do what they have to do that's best for their family and for their kids. But for those people who can still get an exemption and they want to build natural immunity through homeopathy and homeoprophylaxis.
And also, Robin, this is my motivation in teaching doctors, because if doctors in those states where there's a lot of restrictions get it, understand it, and feel confident with it, then there's always the chance that they can sign off as a child being immunized with homeoprophylaxis. So.
Right. And I think that's where the law is very gray right there, because homeopathy is something that's recognized by the FDA, but homeoprophylaxis is this gray area, it sounds like, although you guys are finding immunity is built to these infectious diseases when they're treated with HP. So this is an area that has a lot of gray areas, but if more and more doctors start practicing with it and getting comfortable with it, something may change.
And it's a grassroots movement. The more parents that request it or ask about it, that will generate interest for doctors to learn something about it, hopefully. I mean, the pressures are huge to prevent them from doing HP. There's a lot of financial benefits from doing vaccines. So, there's the risk of being ostracized by their colleagues. I mean, there are a lot of impediments. So it's a grassroots movement. Start with the parents who sincerely want something safer for their children, and then hopefully it moves out from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say to parents who are, and I'm only asking because I have actually encountered this, and I'm throwing a wild card at you now, but okay. what do you say to people who think that, well, they're way not into vaccines. They're like, they're not even going there. They don't want to have anything to do with vaccines. And they think that their family can build immunity naturally. They don't even want to try homeoprophylaxis because it's not natural to them. What do you say to that? I don't know if I asked it right, but
no, you expressed it fine, and a lot of people do ask this because people who do their research, that's kind of the first step. They realize that what they don't want. So what I tell people is that Dr. Golden's study showed us that those children who had done HP had better long-term immunity than those children who were unvaccinated. And here's a possible answer to why. Those children received all the benefits of natural disease with none of the risks. And the way Mother Nature designed the world is that we get natural disease. So those children had the natural disease energetically, and it had a way of toning their immune system so they were even more robust than those who did nothing.
Right, right. You know, I like HP as an option because vaccines, obviously we've talked about some of the downfalls with the adjuvants and some of the foreign protein DNA that may be contaminated with other infectious diseases. But just the concept of putting a live or even an inactivated virus into a host may not even be the most wise thing to do, because viruses, they can evolve when they're inside of a host.
Right, exactly. They morph and evolve. The other point too, Robin, is that, you know, for those people who don't want to vaccinate or do anything, there are those individuals who can't withstand natural disease. Mm-hmm. So, you know, why not offer some degree of protection to those who can't withstand natural disease and would suffer?
Right. Right. Yeah, this is a really good solution for immunocompromised patients too, who don't want to risk. Obviously, they say don't go around immunocompromised patients after you've been vaccinated with a live virus because you can shed the virus. So if you don't actually have the live virus in you, then there's no chance of hurting that population of immunocompromised individuals.
Correct. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Very smart. There's so many details to talk about here, but I think that was a really great synopsis, and I'm just going to check my list here to make sure I covered everything I wanted to. I guess the only thing we should really expand on is what's the next step if a parent does want to work on this? And you also said to me at one point there were other applications besides just childhood illness. So talk about that and then how they can work with you.
So there's travel prophylaxis. So if you're going to a country where there's certain diseases, you can do HP prior to travel. Travel clinics will sometimes tell you that you must get certain vaccines. This is not accurate. There's no required vaccines other than yellow fever if you're going to a place where yellow fever is endemic. And you can look on the CDC site and see those maps and find out. In order to get back in the U.S., you need the yellow fever vaccine certified that you had it. No other diseases are required, the vaccine, so you can do HP prior to travel. And I do lots of people going on mission trips, going to South America, going to Africa, India, with a lot of the tropical diseases. So also short-term epidemics, there's a great application like flu season. We use influenzainum for flu season, very easy to use, very effective, very safe. And then there's childhood diseases. So there's those three applications: epidemics, travel, and then childhood diseases. People can contact me through Worldwide Choice for information. I just send out a fact sheet. I send out pricing for the kit. People utilize the kit themselves at home after I train them. So there's an instructional consult that's included, and then my support for the duration of the program. The program lasts about 3 years for childhood diseases, and I'm available to the people by email for any questions during that time in case they hit an impasse. Also, the organization that I co-founded, which is Free and Healthy Children, has different practitioners throughout the country that have been trained and certified, and people can access them as well through freeandhealthychildren.org.
Okay, great. Well, that was very, very informative. I feel like I have a better understanding now than I did after our first conversation. So
Good.
thank
Good.
you. So I'm going to publish this on our website, obviously, for everyone to listen to. And if you don't mind, if people have questions, I'll pass them along to you. If people comment or ask me questions, I'll just pass them on to you.
That would be great.
Yeah, but anyways, people can also contact you again at worldwidechoice.org. And practitioners and parents and general public are welcome to attend the Worldwide Choice Homeoprophylaxis Conference in St. Petersburg, Florida,
Yep.
October 7th through 9th. And information for that conference is at worldwidechoice.org/conference. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Scylla.
Thank you, Robin, for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.